Good afternoon, radio fans. Big Al here on this Tuesday, March 3rd, 2026, and welcome back to a look at the January 2026 radio ratings from across the country. Today, we'll be taking a look at markets 5 through 8 as we'll look at Houston, San Francisco, Atlanta, and Washington, D.C. Alright, like, comment, and subscribe to my channel, ring the bell, and get notified every time I go live. And a quick reminder that these ratings are courtesy of RadioInsight.com. Just go to RadioInsight.com/ratings and then look up your market and take a look at the ratings there. Alright, so starting off with market number 5, we got the Houston-Galveston radio market, and it appears there's no change at the top for the most part. The market leader in Houston is iHeartMedia's Sunny 99.1 KODA FM, which plays adult contemporary music. They did drop from their holiday book at 13.3 down to a 9.7, but they still have a big lead in the Houston-Galveston market. Their cumulative audience is also the highest in the Houston area station, 1,928,000. In second place, you have Urban One's adult R&B station, Magic 102.1 KMJQ, which also took a dip from 7.5 to 6.9. They have a cumulative audience of 781,200. Its sister country station, 93Q KKBQ FM, takes third place. They're up from 5.3 to 5.8 with a cumulative audience of 943,200. Hope Media Group flagship station, 89.3 KSBJ, with a Christian adult contemporary format, sits at number 4, dropping from 5.6 to 5.3, and a cumulative audience of 660,500. Coming in 5th place is Odyssey's Hot AC Mix 96.5 KHMX, slipping just a little from 5.2 to 5.1. They have a cumulative audience of 1,124,500. We have a tie for 6th place with Urban One's classic rock simulcast of the Eagle, 106.9 KHPT and 107.5 KGLK. Staying steady at a 5.0 with a cumulative audience of 1,054,000. Also tied for 6th is iHeartRadio's news talk station, News Radio 740 KTRH, which jumped 2 points from a 3.0 to a 5.0. They have a cumulative audience of 342,800. Coming in 7th place is their iHeartRadio sister station, 94.5 The Buzz KTBZ, which is a mix of alternative and active rock. They're up from a 4.0 to a 4.4 with a cumulative audience of 678,900. Odyssey country station, 100.3 The Bull KILT FM, is tied with its sister adult hit station, 95.7 The Spot KKHH, both coming in at a 4.1. The Bull took a drop from 4.8 to 4.1, and they have a cumulative audience of 754,000, while 95.7 The Spot is up from 3.9 to 4.1, and a cumulative audience of 1,112,300. So those two stations are tied for 7th. Not seventh. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. They're actually tied for ninth. Sorry about that, but they do round out the top 10. In 11th place is Houston Public Media's News 88.7 KUHF, owned by the University of Houston. They're up from 3.0 to 3.8 with a cumulative audience of 200,300. Coming in 12th place is Urban One's hip-hop station 97.9 The Box KBXX, which is up from 2.8 to 3.4 and a cumulative audience of 526,200. Tied for 13th, you have Televisa Univision's Amor 106.5 KOVE, which plays Spanish adult hits. And iHeartRadio hip hop station 93.7 The Beat KQBT. Amor is up from 2.6 to 3.1 with a cumulative audience of 364,400, while The Beat inches up from 3.0 to 3.1. They have a cumulative audience of 577,100, and both stations are tied for 13th place. Coming in at number 15 is Spanish Broadcasting System's La Ley 92.1 KROI, one of many regional Mexican stations in the Houston area. They dropped from a 3.4 to a 2.7 with a cumulative audience of 327,300. So they continue to drop off after posting that 4.0 back in November. And they are presently in 15th place. Coming in 16th place is Mediaco's regional Mexican station La Raza, 98.5 and 101.7, which is KTJM FM on 98.5, and KNTE 101.7 out of Bay City. They inch up from a 2.3 to a 2.4 with a cumulative audience of 241,400. Its sister regional Mexican station from Mediaco, El Norte 107.9 or 107.9 KQQK, holds steady at a 2.2 with a cumulative audience of 345,200. And that would place them in 17th place, while La Raza is 16th. At number 18, you have Odyssey Sports Station, Sports Radio 610, KILT AM. Up from a 1.3 to a 1.7, and a cumulative audience of 196,600. This is the Houston Texans flagship station. Number 19 is Hope Media Group's Vida Unida, heard on KHVU-FM 91.7. They have a Spanish Christian AC format, and they're steady at a 1.6, with a cumulative audience of 150,300. They are actually tied with 90.9 The Choice, which is KTSU FM. This is a jazz station from Texas Southern University. They're up from 1.3 to a 1.6 and a cumulative audience of 173,500. Next up is Televisa Univision's regional Mexican station, Que Buena 102.9. 102.9 KLTN, dropping from a 1.5 to a 1.3, and a cumulative audience of 289,900. Behind them is Odyssey's Spanish contemporary station, Mega 101 KLOL. They're also down from 1.4 to 1.1. They have a cumulative audience of 401,300. Next is iHeartRadio sports station, Sports Talk 790 KBME. Moving up from from 0.7 to 1.0 and a cumulative audience of 153,600. This would be the flagship station for the Houston Astros and Houston Rockets. That's followed by Televisa Univision's Latino Mix, 104.9 KAMA FM with a Spanish contemporary format. They're steady at a 0.7 with a audience of 193,400. And then the local Air 1 station in the Houston area, 103.7 KHJK, which plays Christian worship music, is steady at a 0.6. They have a cumulative audience of 76,000. This ties them with iHeartRadio talk station 950 KPRC, which moved up from a 0.3 to a 0.6. KPRC has a cumulative audience of 74,300. Then you have Houston Christian Broadcaster's flagship station, 105.7 KHCB, with their long-running religious format, slipping from a 0.6 to a 0.5 and a cumulative audience of 93,100. Joey's in the house. What's poppin', bro? Next up is the local K-Love station in Houston, 97.1 KLVH, which is up from 0.4 to 0.5, and a cumulative audience of 164,900. And then you have a tie with Odyssey's Fiero HD, which originates from Dallas and heard in the Houston area on KLOL HD2, and Urban One's gospel station, Praise 102.1, on KMJQ's HD2. Both stations are steady at a 0.4. Fiero has a cumulative audience of 48,500, while Praise 102.1 HD2 has a cumulative audience of 66,500. Next up is Pacifica Foundation owned and operated KPFT 90.1, which is steady at a 0.3 and a cumulative audience of 84,600. They are tied with Houston Public Media's HPM Classical, which is heard on KUHF HD2. HPM Classical took a dip from 0.7 to 0.3 with a cumulative audience of 25,200. Next up is Televisa Univision's regional Mexican station, Estéreo Latino 93.3 FM. That's KESS FM. They're up from 0.1 to 0.2 with a cumulative audience of 80,700. This ties them with Siga Broadcasting Corporation's 71540 KSEV. The main station is KSEV 700 out of Tomball, Texas. It is also being simulcast on KGBC 1540 AM in Galveston. They're down from a 0.6 to a 0.2 with a cumulative audience of 98,300. Next up, you have Hector Govera Ministries' Spanish tropical station La Calle, heard on KJOZ 880 AM. They're down from 0.3 to 0.2 with a cumulative audience of 91,800. All right, the online stream of 105.7 KHCB registers at a 0.1 with a cumulative audience of 5,000. Then you have Community Radio's Christian country station 90.5 KJIC, which is licensed out of Santa Fe, Texas. This is south of Houston. They're steady at a 0.1 with a cumulative audience of 31,000. And then iHeartRadio's Black-oriented news and talk station Houston's BIN 1320, heard on KXYZ AM, is also steady at a 0.1, with a cumulative audience of 19,400. 4 Odyssey streams did not register in the January books for Houston, and that includes the online streams of Mix 96.5, Sports Radio 610, 100.3 The Bull, and 95.7 The Spot. And a quick note here from Radio Insight. KQBU flipped from a Spanish sports station to a regional Mexican station back on October 8th of 2025. And of course, the KQBU call letters are now placed on a sister station in Dallas. So that's the Houston-Galveston market. Now we're going to go to market number 6, which is the San Francisco radio market. And taking the top spot in San Francisco is Northern California Public Broadcasting's 88.5 KQED FM, which is the local NPR news station in San Francisco. They jumped from a 9.2 to a 9.8 with a cumulative audience of 753,600. Coming in second is Odyssey's all news station, KCBS AM, which is all news 106.9 and 740. The main station is on 740. The FM simulcast is heard on KFRC 106.9. They're up from 7.9 to 8.3 with a cumulative audience of 677,700. Coming in third is Classical California KDFC on 90.3 FM, owned by the University of Southern California out of Los Angeles. This station actually slipped from 5.0 to 4.9. They have a cumulative audience of 290,400. In fourth place is Bonneville's adult contemporary station 96.5 KOIT, which dropped from a 9.9 share playing Christmas music back to 4.7 in their regular format, and they have a cumulative audience of 985,900. So this was the market leader during the holiday season, but now they've slipped to fourth place. Coming in at number 5 is Bonneville's sister top 40 station, 99.7 Now, KMVQ. Jumping from a 3.8 to a 4.6 with a cumulative audience of 714,400. iHeartRadio Hot AC station, Star 101.3 KIOI, sees a 1-point increase from the holidays, from 2.7 to 3.7. They have a cumulative audience of 660,200. And that puts them at number 6. At number 7 is their sister Soft AC station, 98.1 The Breeze, KISQ. Taking a big jump from 2.8 to 3.6. Cumulative audience of 763,500. So that puts them at number 7. Then at number 8 is Odyssey's Hot AC station, Alice at 97.3 KLLC. Inching up from 3.3 to 3.5. Cumulative audience of 705,300. In ninth place is Odyssey's alternative station, Live 105 KITS, which is steady at a 3.0, and a cumulative audience of 518,300. And then rounding out the top 10 is iHeartRadio's top 40 station, Wild 94.9 KYLD, which holds steady at a 2.8. They have a cumulative audience of 594,800. At number 11 is Televisa Univision's Spanish adult hit station, Amor 100.3 KBRG, which is based out of San Jose. They're up half a point from 2.1 to 2.6 with a cumulative audience of 301,200. Then in 12th place is Bonneville's Urban AC station 102.9 KBLX, also up half a point from 1.8 to 2.3. Cumulative audience of 368,900. At number 13 is Spanish Broadcasting System's regional Mexican station, 93.3 La Raza, KRZZ FM, slipping from 2.3 to 2.2. Cumulative audience of 224,300. At number 14, it's iHeartRadio's Classic Hits station, Classic Hits 103.7 KOSF, up from 2.0 to 2.1. Cumulative audience of 479,700. In 15th place is their sister hip-hop station, 106.1 KMEL, steady at a 2.0. Cumulative audience of 423,000. In 16th, it's Odyssey Sports Station 95.7 The Game, KGMZ, which also serves as the flagship station of the Golden State Warriors. They're up from 1.6 to 1.9 with a cumulative audience of 235,000. In 17th place, you have Bonneville Classic Rock Station 98.5 KFOX, KUFX, jumping from 1.2 to 1.8, cumulative audience of 326,900. At 18th place is 107.3 KLove, KLVS, up from 1.3 to 1.7 with a cumulative audience of 246,000. Then in 19th place, you have Odyssey's classic hip-hop station, 102.1 Jams, KRBQ, holding steady at a 1.5 and a cumulative audience of 372,100. And then rounding out the top 20 is a three-way tie between Connoisseur Media Country Station, Bay Country 94.5 KBAY FM, which is up from 1.1 to 1.4 and a cumulative audience of 195,100. Its sister Hot AC station, Mix 106.5 KEZR, which is up from 1.2 to 1.4 with a cumulative audience of 282,400. And Televisa Univision's regional Mexican simulcast of 98.9 y 99.1 Que Buena, heard on KSOL 98.9 in San Francisco and KSQL 99.1 in San Jose. They're up from 1.3 to 1.4 with a cumulative audience of 193,700. And then further down the list, you have 91.7 KALW, which is a public news and talk station from the San Francisco Unified School District. They're steady at a 1.3 with a cumulative audience of 83,200. Univision's Rhythmic CHR, Latino Mix, 105.7 and 100.7, which is KVVF 105.7. That's the main station that plays in San Francisco and San Jose. And KVVZ 100.7, which is heard in Oakland. They're down from a 1.2 to a 1.0 with a cumulative audience of 181,900. Then Amatoro Sonoma Media's adult contemporary station 100.1 KZST is down from 1.4 to 1.0 with a cumulative audience of 114,600. Next up is Jazz 91. This is KCSM, a jazz station from San Mateo County Community College. This is down in Santa Clara. They dropped from 1.0 to 0.8 with a cumulative audience of 120,600. Connoisseur Media Hot AC Station 95.3 KUIC is also down from 0.7 to 0.6. Cumulative audience of 135,400. That's followed by the online stream of Jazz 91, posting a 0.5 and a cumulative audience of 16,700. Next up is KEXP Bay Area, heard on KEXE 92.7. It is owned by the Friends of KEXP up in Seattle, Washington. This station is up from 0.3 to 0.4 with a cumulative audience of 79,200. Then you have Laser Licenses Classic Spanish Adult Contemporary Station La Mejor 104.1 KJOR, registering for the first time at a 0.3 and a cumulative audience of 39,900. Next is Connoisseur Media's Hot AC Station 101.7 KKIQ, steady at a 0.3, cumulative audience of 70,800. And then the next three stations are owned by Amatoro Sonoma Media. Their news talk station, KSRO, is down from 0.4 to 0.3 with a cumulative audience of 18,800. Its country station, Froggy 92.9 KFGY, is steady at 0.2 and a cumulative audience of 40,500. And its top 40 CHR station, Hot 101.7 KHTH, is steady as well at a 0.2 and a cumulative audience of 40,600. Odyssey's top 40 dance and talk station aimed at the LGBTQ community, Channel Q, which is heard locally in San Francisco on KLLC HD2, is up from a 0.1 to a 0.2 and a cumulative audience of 35,400. And then you have Amatoro Sonoma Media's Classic Hits Station 102.7 The Wolf, KWVF, dropping from a 0.6 to a 0.2 and a cumulative audience of 51,000. Laser Licenses Regional Mexican Station Radio Laser 93.7 KXZM registers at 0.2. Cumulative audience of 48,500. And then you'll have 5 stations tied at a 0.1, including Bonneville's Old School 102.9, which is a urban AC station heard on KBLX HD2, dropping from a 0.2 to a 0.1, and a cumulative audience of 37,400. And then Redwood Empire's Jazzy 93.7 KJZY, which is listed as an adult standard station. They register at 0.1, cumulative audience of 11,000. Bonneville's dance music station, Pulse Radio, heard on KMVQHD2. Let me get this off of here. Is also registering at 0.1 with a cumulative audience of 21,000. Bonneville's album, or rather adult album alternative station, Highway 1 Radio, that's heard on KOITHD2. They're steady at a 0.1 and a cumulative audience of 29,800. And Arturo and Amatoro Sonoma Media's classic rock station, 97.7 The River, which is KVRV, is steady at a 0.1 and a cumulative audience of 30,300. Not registering in the San Francisco books for January are the online stream of All News 106.9 and 740 KCBS with a cumulative audience of 0. Redwood Empire's 99.1 The Bull, playing classic country on KGZYHD2. They have a cumulative audience of 18,000. The local black information station in the Bay Area, which is Oakland licensed KKSF 910. They have a cumulative audience of 18,200. And University of Southern California's KUSC FM, or Classical California KUSC. This is the main Los Angeles station. They didn't register in San Francisco either, but they did have a cumulative audience of 2,700. All right, moving on to market number 7, we have the Atlanta, Georgia radio market. And I'm assuming that Cox Media Group still has a stranglehold on the market. And looks like they do, as 3 of their stations and 4 of Atlanta's top 6 in the ratings for January are all Cox Media properties. We'll start off at the top with its news talk station, 95.5 WSB, which is heard on WSB AM 750 and simulcast on Doraville licensed WSB BFM 95.5. They saw more than a 1-point increase from the holidays, going from 6.7 to 7.8. They have a cumulative audience of 397,300. Coming in at number 2 is their sister Urban AC station, KISS 104.1 WALR, which is up from 6.4 to 6.7, and a cumulative audience of 465,600. And then taking the 3rd spot is their classic rock station, 97.1 The River WSRV, which is up from 5.7 to 6.4, cumulative audience of 554,000. Taking the 4th spot is Urban One's adult R&B simulcast of Magic 107.5 and 97.5. The main signal is over WAMJ 107.5 in Roswell, Georgia, and its simulcast partner is WUMJ 97.5 FM out of Fayetteville, Georgia. They're up from a 6.0 to a 6.2 and a cumulative audience of 412,300. This will tie them for 4th place with Odyssey's hip-hop station V103, WVEE. They're up from 6.1 to 6.2 to force this 4th place tie. Cumulative audience of 575,700. At number 6 is another Cox Media Group station, adult contemporary B98.5 WSB FM, which saw a 1-point rise from 4.8 to 5.8, and a cumulative audience of 673,700. Coming in at number 7 is Odyssey Sports Station 92.9 The Game WZGC, which serves as the flagship station for the Hawks and Falcons. They're steady at a 4.6 with a cumulative audience of 273,100. At number 8 is Atlanta's NPR news station, 90.1 WABE FM from Atlanta Public Schools. They're up from a 3.2 to a 4.0 with a cumulative audience of 257,800. Taking a big drop down to 9th place is Odyssey's rhythmic AC station Star 94 WSTR, plummeting from a 6.3 down to a 3.8. They have a cumulative audience of 509,300. And then rounding out the top 10 is Urban One Gospel Station, Praise 102.5 WPZE, which slipped from a 3.5 down to a 3.2. They have a cumulative audience of 201,500. And then going below the top 10, at number 11 is iHeartRadio's hip-hop station, 96.1 The Beat, WRDG, jumping from a 2.2 to a 3.0. Cumulative audience of 263,900. At number 12 is K-Love Incorporated's 104.7 Air 1, heard in the Atlanta area on WAIA FM, dropping big from a 4.5 to a 2.8, and a cumulative audience of 188,900. And then its sister station, 106.7 WAKL, which is the local K-Love station in Atlanta, is also down, going from 3.0 to 2.6, and a cumulative audience of 231,400. This ties them for 13th with iHeart Country Station 94.9 The Bull, WUBL, which moved up from 2.4 to 2.6. They have a cumulative audience of 267,200. JDJ Communications hip-hop station, Streets 94.5, which is heard technically on WWSZ 1420 AM, but they also have an FM translator in Atlanta on 94.5. They come in at 15th place, dropping from 2.4 to 2.2. They have a cumulative audience of 177,000. And this keeps them ahead of Urban One's hip-hop station, Hot 107.9 WHTA, which slipped from a 2.0 down to a 1.9. Cumulative audience of 264,300. So that gives Hot 107.9 16th place. In 17th place is Dickey Broadcasting's sports station, The Fan, 680 and 93.7. The main station is heard over WCNN 680 AM with an FM translator in Atlanta on 93.7. This is the Atlanta Braves flagship station. They're up from 1.2 to 1.3 with a cumulative audience of 121,700. Tied for 18th is Radio Training Network's The Joy FM 93.3 and 102.1. The main signal is heard on WVFJ 93.3. And their simulcast is heard in the Macon area on 102.1. They have a contemporary Christian format, and this station dropped from 1.3 to 1.1. And a cumulative audience of 115,300. This ties them with iHeartRadio's top 40 station, Power 105.3, WWPW. They made a rise a half a point from 0.6 to 1.1. They have a cumulative audience of 141,000. Now, this station used to be at 96.1, which is a full market signal, whereas 105.3 is heard primarily in the southern portions of the Atlanta metro. They and the beat, of course, swapped frequencies in 2024. Urban One's R&B oldies station, Classics 1029, heard on WAMJ-HD2, is down from 1.3 to 1.0, with a cumulative audience of 113,700. Then Public News and Talk station, Public News and Talk and Adult Album Alternative Hybrid, WRAS-FM 88.5, owned primarily by Georgia State University, is up from 0.6 to 0.9 with a cumulative audience of 67,600. Now, this station primarily airs Georgia Public Broadcasting content to the Atlanta metro area during the day and plays adult album alternative the rest of the time. Next is iHeartMedia's Spanish contemporary station Zeta 105.7 WBZY, dropping from 1.0 to 0.7, cumulative audience of 75,000. Tying them with Dickey Broadcasting's conservative talk station Extra 106.3, heard on WFOM, which I think is 1230. They're up from 0.1 to 0.7 and a cumulative audience of 33,700. Those two stations are tied with Davis Broadcasting's regional Mexican station La Raza, 102.3 and 107.1. The station is heard primarily on WLKQ 102.3. And I think there's a translator in the metro Atlanta area at 107.1. They're down from 0.8 to 0.7 with a cumulative audience of 50,000. Next up is Clark Atlanta University Jazz Station, Jazz 91.9 BCLK, dropping from 0.6 to 0.5. Cumulative audience of 74,000. Then you have BIN 640, which is WBIN AM from iHeartMedia, inching up from 0.1 to 0.2 and a cumulative audience of only 8,300. And then you have Davis Broadcasting's Smooth Jazz 101.1 WJZA, which is heard on the AM side of the dial with an FM translator. They're down from 0.3 to 0.2 and a cumulative audience of 32,100. And then you have 8 stations tied at a 0.1, including Atlanta Public Schools WABE Classics, which plays classical music on WABE FM HD2. They're at a 0.1, cumulative audience of 10,800. Odyssey's News and Talk 1380 WAOK, also at a 0.1, with a cumulative audience of 5,600. iHeartRadio's regional Mexican station El Patron 96.7 WBZW is steady at a 0.1 and a cumulative audience of 19,200. Then you have Davis Broadcasting's Spanish Hot AC station Mega 96.5, which is heard technically on WCHK 1290. They're steady at a 0.1 and a cumulative audience of 10,300. Hey, Cajun, what's poppin'? Next is Georgia Public Broadcasting's GPB programming, heard on WJSP-FM, which is steady at 0.1 and a cumulative audience of 7,800. And then you have Odyssey's Star 94.1 HD2, which plays classic hits on WSTR's second HD subchannel. They're at a 0.1 with a cumulative audience of 12,100. And then V103 International, which plays reggae on WVEE HD2, is at a 0.1 and a cumulative audience of 9,000. And then News Talk 1380 WAOK, which is also heard in HD, VEE HD3, is also at a 0.1 with a cumulative audience of 5,400. All right. Not registering in the Atlanta books for January are 3 streams of Odyssey stations, including Star 94, V103, and 92.9 The Game. All right, we're going to wrap up this look at the ratings with the number 8 market in the U.S., and that's our nation's capital, Washington, D.C. There we go. And leading the way in the nation's capital is Hubbard Broadcasting's WTOP News. Heard on WTOP FM 103.5. Also heard in Northern Virginia on 107.7 and in portions of Maryland on 103.9. This station jumped up from an 11.3 to a 13.5 as they are dominating the DC ratings. They have a cumulative audience of 851,200. In second place is American University's public news and talk station, WAMU 88.5, which is the local NPR station in Washington. They're up from a 9.8 to an 11.0 and a cumulative audience of 562,300. Then in third place, you have Howard University's urban adult contemporary station 96.3 WHUR, moving up from a 5.9 to a 6.6 and a cumulative audience of 487,100. Taking the number 4 spot is Atlantic Gateway Communications Christian AC station 91.9 WGTS, which is up from 4.5 to 5.4 and a cumulative audience of 269,600. WGTS is tied for 4th place with iHeartMedia's alternative station DC 101, which is WWDC-FM. They're up from 4.8 to 5.4 with a cumulative audience of 459,700. WGTS and DC 101 are tied again for 4th place. Coming in at number 6 is iHeartMedia's adult contemporary station 97.1 Wash FM, which dropped from its Christmas Day showing of 10.1 down to a 4.9 and a cumulative audience of 719,200. Coming in at number 7 is classical WETA 90.9 FM, owned by the Greater Washington Educational Telecommunications Association, which also owns the main PBS station, WETA TV Channel 26. They're up from a 3.5 to a 3.8 and a cumulative audience of 238,600. Coming in at number 8 is iHeart Country Station 98.7 WMZQ, which is up from 2.8 to 3.6 and a cumulative audience of 241,300. Its sister classic rock station, Big 100 WBIG-FM, is up from 3.0 to 3.3, taking the number 9 spot. They have a cumulative audience of 459,600, and this is the Washington Commanders flagship station. Rounding out the top 10 is another iHeart radio station, Top 40s. That's their top 40 station, Hot 99.5 WIHT, jumping from a 2.5 to a 3.2, and a cumulative audience of 484,600. All right. Dropping out of the top 10 is Urban One's Urban AC station, Magic 102.3 WMMJ, which is down from a 4.5 to a 2.9, and a cumulative audience of 320,300. Now, they lost the simulcast on 92.7, which flipped to urban contemporary gospel music. Meanwhile, Odyssey hip-hop station WPGC 95.5 comes in 12th place, slipping from a 2.6 to a 2.4, and a cumulative audience of 302,300. Urban One's gospel station, WPRS-FM, which is now Praise 92.7 and 95.9, is up from 1.8 to 2.3, and a cumulative audience of 109,100. That's good for a tie, or no, that's good for 13th by themselves. Tied for 14th place is Odyssey Classic Hits Station 94.7 The Drive WIAD, and Urban One Hip Hop Station 93.9 WKYS, both dropping from a 2.3 to a 2.1. The Drive has a cumulative audience of 417,900, while WKYS has a cumulative audience of 277,400. Coming in at number 16 is Odyssey Sports Station 106.7 The Fan WJFK-FM, seeing a 1-point jump from 0.9 to 1.9, and a cumulative audience of 116,600. Now, this is the radio flagship station of the Washington Capitals and Washington Nationals. You can also hear Georgetown basketball on this station as well. Its sister Spanish contemporary station, El Zol 107.9 WLZL-FM, drops from a 1.6 down to a 1.4, with a cumulative audience of 137,500. DC's local K-Love station, 107.3 WLVW, is also down from 0.8 to 0.7, and a cumulative audience of only 103,500. Connoisseur Media Country Station, 93.3 WFLS, which is based in Fredericksburg, they're down from a 0.7 to a 0.6, and a cumulative audience of 85,800. Next is Urban One Sports Station, the Team 980 and 95.9, heard on WTEM AM. They're up from 0.5 to 0.6 with a cumulative audience of 46,500. And I think this is the Washington Wizards flagship station, if I'm not mistaken. Centennial Hot AC Station B101.5 WBQB is up from 0.4 to 0.5. Cumulative DC audience of 63,200. Next is the online stream of Latino 104.1 and 88.7, heard on WDCJ 104.1 FM. This is the new Spanish contemporary station from Urban One. They have a cumulative audience of 13,800. Odyssey's business news station, Bloomberg 99.1 WDCH-FM, heard in both Washington and Baltimore, is down from a 0.5 to a 0.4, with a cumulative audience of 61,500. Tied with them is Manning Broadcasting's classic hits station, 106.9 The Eagle, or WWEG, dropping from a 1.0 to a 0.4. They have a cumulative audience of 87,700. They have 5 stations tied at 0.3, including Manning Broadcasting's Key 103, which plays Hot AC on WAFY. WAFY-FM. They're steady at a 0.3. Cumulative audience of 61,000. The main feed of Urban One's WDCJ-FM, Latino 104.1 and 88.7, is up from 0.1 to 0.3, with a cumulative audience of 64,100. Nueva Networks WDCN-FM, that's the 88.7 frequency. They're down from 0.7 to 0.3 with a cumulative audience of 50,300. Odyssey's Channel Q, which is heard on WIAD-HD2, is up from 0.2 to 0.3 with a cumulative audience of 23,000. Peter and John Radio Fellowship's Christian Adult Contemporary station, which is actually 95.1 Bright FM and not Shine FM. That's WRBS FM out of Baltimore. They dropped from a 0.4 to a 0.3 and a cumulative audience of 54,500 in the DC area. Air One, which is heard in parts of DC on 92.5 WAIW, is steady at a 0.2 with a cumulative audience of 39,400. The Quiet Storm, which is a 24/7 urban R&B station from Howard University's WHUR HD2, is steady at a 0.2. They have a cumulative audience of 8,000. Hubbard Broadcasting's variety station, The Gamut, heard on WSHE 820 AM, is steady at a 0.2 with a cumulative audience of 41,100. Bluegrass Country, which is heard on American University's WAMU-FM HD2, holds steady at 0.1 with their bluegrass format. They have a cumulative audience of 7,100. C-SPAN Radio, heard on WCSP-FM 90.1, drops from a 0.2 to a 0.1 and a cumulative audience of 30,300. And Costa Media's regional Mexican station, La Pantera, 100.7 y 220 AM, which is WFAX AM 1220 out of Fairfax, Virginia, is steady at a 0.1 and a cumulative audience of 7,300. Not registering in DC for January is Pride Radio. That's the LGBTQ Top 40 and Dance station from iHeartRadio, heard locally on WIHT-HD2. They have a cumulative audience of 7,400. The online stream of 106.7 The Fan also didn't register. 94.3 K-Love WLZV also didn't register, but had a cumulative audience of 5,100. They got the online streams of both WPGC 95.5 and the Team 980 and 95.9. Also not registering is iHeartRadio sports station WTSD 1190 iHeart Sports DC. with a cumulative audience of 2,400. And Manning Broadcasting's classic country station, 93.5 and 100.5 Max Country, heard on WWEG HD3. All right. Urban One moved its gospel format from 104.1 to 92.7 on October 16th, 2025. And then 104.1 would become WDCJ with a Spanish contemporary formats. All right, that's a look at the January 2026 ratings for Houston, San Francisco, Atlanta, and Washington. In our next installment, we'll take a look at Philadelphia, Boston, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, and Seattle, Tacoma. That's markets 9 through 12. So make sure you join me for that. In the meantime, like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Ring the bell and get notified every time I go live. Big Al signing off. Thanks for watching and happy listening. Peace out.